Alkışlarınızla Bhavin Turakhia'yı sahneye davet ediyorum.
Hi everybody. Oh wow, that's loud. Um, I'm so excited to be here in Turkey, in this amazing city of Istanbul. This is my second trip to Istanbul right now. I was here about 7-8 years ago. A lot of our customers, so one of my first companies that I founded, which we subsequently sold, Resellerclub, we have a lot of hosting companies here that have been customers and still continue to be customers of my previous company, and so I have fond memories of this place. So today I'll just spend about 15 minutes, 20 minutes taking you through a topic that I'm really passionate about. I'm actually really passionate about this industry, the web hosting industry and the domain registration industry as a whole. I've spent 20 years of my life in this space and industry. And I think there's tremendous potential that we all have, audience in this room, audience at this conference, tremendous potential that we have in terms of the large customer base that we address and the meaningful journey that we can take them through across their kind of online presence, right? Most of my presentation, I'm going to cover it in sort of, 3 parts. I'll start off with sort of a quick introduction to myself and then take you through a 3-part presentation where I'm doing what I call a SWOT analysis of the hosting industry. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are the opportunities that we have as an industry and what are the threats that we face as an industry? And then I want to briefly talk about a specific opportunity that's very close to my heart, which is email and productivity software. Flock, one of my latest companies, is actually providing and competing in this space. And for the last part, I'll spend a couple of minutes talking a little bit about Flock and then end the presentation. Just by way of quick background, I didn't understand much of the Turkish, but I know that Berke's covered some of this already. I was the co-founder of Resellerclub, Logicboxes and BigRock, along with my brother back in '98. I started out, as many of the hosting companies here in this conference started out. In 1998, I bought my first server in a company called Alabanza in the United States. Started selling web space, and this was before ICANN accredited registrars were even in existence, so we were selling domain names from Internic, buying them for back then it was $100 first, then $70 for 2-year domain registrations, and then eventually we became OpenSRS resellers, and then became ICANN accredited registrars ourselves, and then started these 3 companies, and became one of the largest providers in the world with about 10 million domain names on our platform. We were adding about 4 million new domain names every year until we eventually sold this company to Endurance. I currently run Flock, Zeta, and Radix. Flock is in the productivity software space. So we compete with G Suite and Office 365. We have a suite of products comprising of email, calendar, contacts, messenger, video calling. Radix is a provider of new top-level domains. So we own, it's actually one of the exhibitors here, we own .online, .site, .space, .store, .tech, and many other TLDs. And Zeta's in the digital payment space. So with that sort of quick introduction, let me start off my presentation with, as I said, the first part, which is the SWOT analysis of this industry, right? And as I said, I really love this industry and space because in many ways, if you look at the strengths that we have, anybody's online internet presence starts out with us. And in fact, if I look at the people at this conference, they potentially control 90% of the internet of the entire country, right? Anybody in the country that has a website or a domain name or a server or a co-location presence or any online presence, if somebody wants to set up an online presence, it goes through one of you guys or one of the attendees at this conference. The attendees at this conference control pretty much all of the content on the internet in this entire country. Hosting companies across the world pretty much control all of the content across the entire internet in some form or the other. And we have such an amazing strength there in terms of being able to influence the technology direction, the software capabilities, the marketing sort of capabilities, etc., of all these SMBs and companies that are our customers and really help them grow their business, right? So we have an amazing strength as an entire industry. We also have an amazing opportunity. So one of the things that I always loved about the domain names and hosting industry, even though I'm not entirely in it anymore, though Radix and Flock in some ways are part of the industry, is that we actually have the opportunity to be at the genesis of every business idea in the world. What does somebody do when they have an idea today? They don't go out there and register a company, hire their first employee, register a trademark. Actually, most people start out with, hey, is the domain name available? Because I know I want to set up something. Whether it's a project, whether it's a team, whether it's a community, whether it's a business, whether it's a company, they connect with one of these providers at this conference to start their business. The very first step of the existence of that business starts out with one of us. And we have the opportunity to be at the absolute genesis of this idea, the absolute beginning of this idea, and then be with that company and that organization throughout the journey, throughout their growth path, throughout them starting off with one employee and growing all the way to 10,000 employees, right? You know, none of the largest companies in the world that we know started out with more than an idea. I mean, you know, Google started out with Sergey and Larry and an idea, right? Facebook started out with Mark Zuckerberg and one idea. And so we, as an industry, have the opportunity to be at the starting point of every idea in the world. And that's such an amazing opportunity to have, that we can actually start at the starting point of the journey of every customer, of every potential idea, of every business, of every project in the entire world. So I love this about our industry, that we were there at the beginning in many ways, in every single case. This is an area where I want to spend some time, which is that there have been a lot of changes in our industry over the last decade, slowly in the beginning and now pretty rapidly, that in many ways are threats that we may not have paid complete attention to. If you think of our customers have substantially changed, right? From baby boomers and Gen X to millennials and Gen Z, there's a dramatic shift in the way our customers are thinking. And I want to talk about some trends that actually have manifested in terms of this sort of change in the way our customers think, behave, act on a daily basis, which in many ways affect our industry and our business. The first is notion of ownership versus access, right? There was a point in time, you know, when ownership was a big thing. I want to own a Mercedes, I want to own a car, I want to own a Audi. And as of today, if you ask most millennials, they don't want to own anything. They want to use Airbnb for homes or, you know, short-term rentals. They want to use Uber for driving, sort of getting from point A to point B. People don't want to own assets. In fact, we've got a generation full of people that only care about access and not about commitment and actual ownership. And that's a massive shift in the way people are thinking. User experience in terms of software that we use has come a long way in comparison to where we were. You know, when you look at softwares like Lotus Notes versus what we use today in terms of, you know, Outlook, Flock, etc. IRC, which used to be the mainstay for messaging 20 years, 15 years ago, versus Flock Messenger or Slack or Microsoft Teams or all of these products that we see today, there's a significant difference in the way users want to experience software. There was a time when software was purely functional. Its job was to get something done. It was clunky, grey little boxes with buttons, and if it got something done, if it got my accounting task done, if it got my HR task done, that was the purpose. It was a functional software. But now it's all about usability. Software doesn't only have to be functional anymore. You know, we start talking about how beautiful it is, how beautiful it looks, how simple it is. You know, it has soul. The experience actually makes me feel good. When we use the software today, when we use apps today on our mobile devices or computers, we expect user experiences that are much better than what used to exist, 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 15 years ago. Consumers have moved into this paradigm of self-research decision-making, right? We've all gone through this era where If we wanted to find a restaurant, we would ask our best friend saying, hey, what do you recommend in this neighborhood, etc. If we wanted to go on a vacation, we would call a travel agent and ask them to plan an itinerary for us back in the day, like our parents or previous generations. But as of today, everything is self-research decision-making. You look at Zomato for restaurant recommendations, you might look at TripAdvisor or some such website for recommend. In fact, we actually trust these apps and this process of self-discovery much more than we trust other people. Every time I get into a cab these days, sometimes I always find myself arguing with the drivers on using Waze or Google Maps versus their own intuition. Because I actually trust Google Maps or Waze to be able to direct the cab driver in a much faster way to the point I want to get to than the driver's intuition without all that data and algorithms and knowledge, right? We trust these softwares, these apps, review websites, etc., far more for our decision making than we trust, other individuals or experts, as we used to call them in the past. And so, even when it comes to software decisions today, there was a time when if a company had to install an HR software or a CRM software, they would ask, their cousin who was really knowledgeable, or the web professional, or an IT professional, or a IT consultant. But now most people will just go to some sort of an online review website, or Twitter, or G2 Crowd, or Capterra, and do comparisons themselves and figure out what's the best HRMS, what's the best CRM, what's the best hosting company, what's the best website design tool. All of this information is available now and facilitates self-research decision making. And it's not just decisions that have become kind of self-researched. There's this whole trend of DIY versus build it for me. Do it myself or do it yourself versus getting somebody to build stuff for you. So that applies to, again, software. There was a time when apps and software across an enterprise had a proper structured planning process, and IT admin would be involved. They would install it on some central server. They would install it on people's computers, train them on how to use it. There was this whole concept, was an entire process by itself. But today, most apps and softwares are self-serve. Forget a CEO or a CTO or a CIO getting involved. My head of sales can go online and sign up with Pipedrive or Salesforce using their freemium account and set it up for his 10 people team and start using it in minutes. Somebody who wants to deploy an instant messenger for a team of 20 product managers and software developers in their company can go to Flock's website and start using it literally in minutes. They don't need anybody's permission. They don't need anybody's assistance. They don't need any help along the way. Softwares have become, and apps have become much more easier for people to be able to service themselves and do things themselves. And that we see that trend in our industry too, right? There was a time when designing a website involved consultants and designers and web design agencies and advertising agencies and companies that would do it for you. But now anybody can go online, literally with basic knowledge of word processing, drag and drop or whatever, and use many tools that are available to construct a fairly decent website or fairly beautiful website themselves. And so this whole trend of DIY versus build it for me is kind of an important trend for our industry also, right? So our customers have changed, our competition has also changed. I was in this space for 20 years. And for 10 to 12 years out of those, or 10 to 14 years out of those 20 years, we all sold the exact same product. We all had these racks with a bunch of servers, and we had a bunch of control panels on them, and every one of our websites, except for colors and a few words here and there, had exactly similar products, right? I mean, today we have this shared hosting, reseller hosting, VPS, dedicated servers. We have, it's all cPanel or Plesk, domain name, website, email. It's exactly identical. Every one of us provides the same product, the same experience, similar promises, and the only USP ends up being prices. We end up competing. Every one of us competes with each other or has competed for more than a decade with each other on purely sort of prices, maybe customer support to a certain extent. There hasn't been any significant distinction or innovation in the space in terms of how we sell our products as an industry. And if you cut to the last few years rather, it's no longer now hosting companies versus other hosting companies. It's no longer my cPanel package has unlimited bandwidth and your cPanel package has 10 GB bandwidth or whatever, right? As of today, the competition has completely changed. As an industry, we're now competing against providers that have actually looked at and used these trends to create new products that service this new generation of customers better. So we're competing against a whole host of do-it-yourself website designers, design tools, for instance, right? Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, Yola, etc. In fact, if you look at Wix's growth on a global basis, in just the last 3 years, they've grown from 1% of all domain names in the world pointing to a Wix name server to now about 3% of all domains in the world pointing to a Wix server, right? 3x growth in that same time period, and it's constantly moving in that upward trend. We're no longer competing with my webmail against your webmail or my Roundcube versus your Roundcube. We've got a whole suite of productivity softwares that now companies like Google, Microsoft are providing, and that's become the new competition. It's no longer one hosting company versus another. There's a completely new paradigm of competition out there. I'll cover this sort of slide later, but competition has more capital, has better R&D, better user experience, which is something that millennials and Gen Z expects today. Much better user experience. Faster development cycles. Gone are the days when new upgrades on software would happen on once every 6 months, once every 12 months. These days, new features get launched every week because these companies use development paradigms that have extremely fast development cycles. And so, all of this, if you see, competition has changed and our customers have changed. And this brings me to kind of the last part of my SWOT analysis of this industry, which is that if you look at our weakness as an industry, is that we have not changed. As an industry, even today, 2 decades from the time that I started my hosting company, we still sell, our websites look the same, we still have the same 3 to 4 web hosting, plans, the same control panels, the same user experience, etc. We provide Roundcube, which 5 years ago looked exactly the same that it looks today, or a whole day or cPanel. Some functionality has changed, but in many ways, the kind of user experience that we provide and the kind of capabilities that we provide and the kind of platform that we provide has not significantly changed. And to me, that's a problem. As an industry, we have tremendous strength. So we have full access to the entire consumer base in the world that goes online. The hosting industry is at the starting point of every customer that goes online in the world. We have that as an opportunity. We're at the beginning of every single idea. That's our strength. That's our opportunity. But unfortunately, if as an industry, we're going to still do the exact same thing we were doing a decade ago, sell the exact same stuff we were selling a decade ago, then we are not going to actually succeed and the industry will start decaying at some point in time, right? So it's not too late for sure, but in many ways I want to make sure that this message goes out there, that we as an industry innovate, that we provide better user experiences, that we focus on product, that we focus on innovation, and that we can actually use the kind of strengths and opportunities that we have to make a meaningful difference to our customer base. That's kind of the first part of my presentation. I'll quickly run through, probably another 5-7 minutes, the balance 2 parts that I need to discuss. One of the things that I have strongly believed in is the whole email and productivity software space. Whenever a business goes online and they start out with a domain name, I think the very first thing, it might take a couple of weeks for somebody to set up a website. They may not even necessarily need a website in all circumstances. But getting basic professional email, getting basic calendaring, basic software is a fundamental need for every single business. And to me, I think this represents a hugely untapped opportunity for our industry. This is some analysis that we did in terms of data and stats that we ran across domain names across 2016, 2017, 2018. What we typically discover is that for every 100 domains that exist or that are registered, as they age, what is the percentage of those domain names that have an MX record? So for those of you here who might not be fully sort of technically grasped in, if a domain name has an MX record, then it's quite likely that they're actually using email at that domain name. And here's where we see sort of an interesting insight that within immediate time of registration of domain names, typically within the first few months itself, about 20% domain names have an MX record. But those domains that then survive year 1 or year 2, year 3, by the time they get to year 3, 60% of those domain names have an MX record. So here are customers who are coming to every one of us, buying a domain name or a hosting package or some service from us. By the time they get to the 4th year, 60% of these companies have some sort of professional email service, but a vast majority of them unfortunately may not end up buying it from our industry. They may end up buying it from other providers. And so for us, even at Flock, basically this is one of the goals that we have, which is to closely work with the hosting industry to enable you to provide a much better email experience. You know, a couple of interesting trends or things that I've seen in our space or industry when it comes to email, which are really eye-openers for me. Most of us, the email that we sell today, so whether it's, you know, the webmail experience ends up being one of Roundcube, Horde, etc., or the kind of email backend, the kind of anti-spam, etc. that we provide, our customers pay us for it, but they actually get a service that's way worse than the free email that they get from Gmail. If you log into a Gmail interface and you log into or an Outlook interface and you log into a hosting company's webmail or a hosting company's email experience, a paid professional email is worse than free email. I mean, that just makes no logical sense to me. Think your customers come to your website, pay you money, log into your software that you're providing them as a paid product, and end up with a worse experience than what they get for free. How exactly do you expect to keep these customers? It just makes no logical sense. And the other interesting thing I've found as a result of this is almost 80 to 90% of the hosting companies that I speak with, they don't use their own email. They either use Microsoft Exchange or Outlook or G Suite or some other email. So they sell a product to their customer, but they don't use it themselves. I mean, how does this ever make sense? If you cannot use your own product, then you don't deserve to sell it to your customers. It just makes no logical sense. So to me, one of this, you know, these sort of misnomers represented sort of an important opportunity for the entire industry, and that's kind of one of our passion areas in Flock also, right? A lot of people still end up either using premium mail, which is expensive in many cases, but 6 to 7% or sometimes 10% of people who have hosting packages with hosting companies within 3 years move to one of these professional productivity software providers. That's a massive revenue that you are losing on a constant basis. The other interesting trend that we've seen, we surveyed a large number of people who've bought cPanel hosting packages or Plus hosting packages or some hosting packages from hosting providers. Interestingly, they still, even though they have a professional email address, many of them will forward that email to their Gmail account so they can log into a better interface and use a better interface to actually send and receive email. Many people would prefer using a, you know, long, hard to remember personal email address with numbers and digits and underscores as compared to a nice professional email address just because of the kind of experience they were providing them, right? Even though business email addresses result in, this is a survey that I think GoDaddy had conducted a while ago, that 75% people believe when they receive a email, if they receive an email from a business email address, it's key to building trust. And in spite of that, so many of your and our customers still continue to use their personal email address on a day-to-day basis. And we ask these customers to why are they doing this? And the top 3 reasons is better user experience. With a Gmail or Outlook, we get, you know, good mobile experience, good desktop experience, good webmail experience, etc. Much better user experience, better features, and, you know, web hosts are not providing us any other options. So we have no choice but to continue using personal email that actually has a much better experience and a much better capability set. And so that concludes sort of part 2. I'll just take a couple of more minutes and wrap up. We can take Q&A after that. Oh, so we can take questions after that. That should be fine. Yeah. So I'll just take a few minutes to quickly introduce Flock. I don't want to spend too much time on this. This is an opportunity that we saw because this is an industry that I've been a part of. And so we've created Flock Suite, which comprises of email, calendar, contacts, and video calling. All of these products, the quality that we've created, the quality bar that we've created is the same bar as what you would find in a G Suite or an Office in terms of look and feel, in terms of user experience, in terms of capabilities and feature sets. We actually go above and beyond and have provided some really interesting features that are very relevant for SMBs and for customers of hosting companies. And we provide this in a very integrated form with the channel. So we have various APIs and integration hooks for cPanel, for Blask, for any control panel that you have, for WHMCS, and various APIs that you can use to sort of directly provision these accounts also. We have a much better UX. This is what FlockMail looks like. It basically works inside web browser, desktop, mobile. We have conversation threads, a functionality that exists in most other free email providers for more than a decade now, but most hosting providers still don't have email that provides conversation threading. Full text advanced search with search modifiers, fully integrated video conferencing, so you can create an email, add a video link, and you can actually participate in a video call from inside your email client. Again, a beautiful looking calendar with all the functionality that you would see in the topmost calendar suites that exist out there. Fully integrated contact suite, which again sort of works seamlessly and beautifully with our mail and calendar applications. This is one area where we felt there was a big gap because there's a massive customer base that exists between that free email and has just bought a domain name to the $6 to $7 pricing that a Google or a Microsoft charges. And so if you look at Flock Suite, it's priced at roughly 1/3 or 1/4 of what you would typically find some of the sort of larger companies sell their productivity suites for. It's meant for that sweet spot in the middle, the 80% consumers who want to start out with a great email and productivity software experience, but still don't want to spend that much money yet. We do have more advanced packages and plans that can take them to the higher parts of the value chain. And the other important part is that the entire suite has been built ground up for customers of hosting companies and domain registrars. It's available in local language, by the way, so we've launched the Turkish version out here. Low prices, we have full integration into various hosting control panels, or you can integrate it using our APIs, and we also have WHMCS integration. So I'll conclude the presentation from my side in a quick summary. I think as an industry, we have amazing strengths and a great opportunity. Once again, at the cost of repeating myself, we have the opportunity, we've been given the gift of being able to start out at the starting point of the journey of every one of our customers. The day they had their first idea, we're present there. How do we leverage that opportunity to continue to ensure that they remain our customers for the entire life of their online presence? That's up to us. If we miss that opportunity, that's our loss. If we successfully leverage that opportunity, that's our gain. It's important that we change with the times. As we discussed, customers have changed, our competition has changed, but in many ways as an industry, we've been very slow to change. I'm actually quite enthusiastic and hopeful. I've met a bunch of hosting companies here, and I see some of their ideas and some of their thoughts, and I really see that enthusiasm and that concept of product innovation, user experience, but really we need to move fast as an industry and embrace this change. And then my personal passion area, as I said, email is a big untapped opportunity. Let's stop providing products that we ourselves hate using to our customers. Let's provide products that we love to use, that are beautiful, that we really enjoy using ourselves, and let's provide those products to our customers when it comes to email and productivity software. And that's conclusion from my side. Thank you, Burke, and thank you the entire team for sort of inviting me here. And I'm happy to take some questions from Burke, either you or the audience. Feel free to ask me anything, by the way. It could be questions about the presentation. It could be questions about the industry. It could be questions about my entrepreneurial journey, tips on startups or entrepreneurship. Any questions that you might have. So
What are my questions?
happy to answer anything that the audience wants to ask.
Sorry,